You're chosen to shift reality silently. These 5 signs confirm it. But there's a strange kind of knowing that lives in certain people. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it doesn't seek attention or recognition. It just exists, quiet, steady, powerful. And if you've ever felt like you were meant to do something important in this world, but you couldn't quite explain it, this is for you. Because there are those among us who weren't born to be on stages or in the spotlight. We were born to shift reality silently, and to move through the world like a whisper that alters the very fabric of energy without ever announcing itself. If you've ever felt invisible yet deeply impactful, misunderstood but spiritually magnetic, you might be one of them. You might be chosen not to be seen, but to see, not to speak loudly, but to resonate quietly. And if that lands in your heart like a forgotten truth, then let's begin. Because there are 5 signs, subtle but undeniable, that confirm you've been chosen to shift reality from the shadows, and once you understand them, you'll never look at your life the same way again. The first sign is the feeling that you've always been different, not in a way that made you superior, but in a way that made you disconnected. Like you were dropped into this world, but never quite felt like you belonged in it. You watched others chase things: status, approval, validation, and it felt exhausting just to pretend you cared. You could never fully play the game because deep down, you knew it wasn't real. You saw through the illusions early, the systems, the roles, the masks. You sensed that something was off, even when you couldn't articulate it. And that inner dissonance wasn't dysfunction, it was discernment. You weren't broken, you were attuned. And that disconnection from the world, it was the universe's way of keeping your energy uncontaminated. So when the time came, you could shift the world without being seduced by it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The second sign is that your life has been filled with initiations that no one else saw. You've died 1,000 silent deaths. You've had to grieve versions of yourself that no one even knew existed. You've navigated heartbreaks, identity collapses, spiritual crises, and you did it all quietly. While others posted their transformations online, you went through yours in the dark, alone. And why? Because your path was never about performance. It was about purification. Every time something was stripped from you, it wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You were being refined, tempered, hollowed out so that something divine could fill you. And if you're honest, the most powerful changes in your life didn't come from external breakthroughs. They came from the quiet moments of surrender. The nights you cried into the pillow and whispered to the universe, "Show me who I really am." And the universe listened not with noise, but with nudges, with synchronicities, with silence that shaped you like a sculptor shaped stone. The third sign is that people are drawn to you in unexplainable ways. They tell you things they've never said out loud, but they feel safe with you, even if they don't know why. They say you have calming energy, or that being around you helps them breathe. What they don't realize is that your frequency has become a tuning fork. You've spent so much time clearing your own field through pain, through solitude, through radical self-inquiry, that now your energy cleanses others without effort. You don't need to speak much. You don't need to fix or advise or guide. Your presence does the work. Because reality isn't shifted through words, it's shifted through resonance. And you become a transmitter of truth simply by being who you are. But That's why people often project onto you too. They sense something in you that mirrors what they've forgotten in themselves. And sometimes that reflection is too bright. So they misunderstand you. They judge you. They distance themselves. But deep down, they feel you. And feeling is the language of reality. The fourth sign is that you've always been the one who walks away. From jobs, from relationships, from communities when something doesn't align, you leave. Even if it means being alone, even if it costs you everything. Because your soul refuses to stay where truth cannot breathe. And that's not weakness, that's sovereignty. You're not afraid of solitude because solitude is where you remember. You've never needed a crowd to feel real. You've needed clarity. And so you've learned to trust the quiet. You've learned that walking away is sometimes the most powerful way to shift energy. That removing your light from a space forces the space to confront its own darkness. And you've done that repeatedly, even when it hurt. Because your loyalty is not to comfort, it's to alignment. And alignment is the true engine of reality shifting. The fifth and final sign is that your life doesn't make linear sense, but it makes energetic sense. You've been led by intuition more than logic. You've made decisions that others called reckless, only to find yourself exactly where you needed to be. You've had moments where time bends, where messages arrive from nowhere, where your dreams feel more real than waking life. You've had conversations that feel like they're happening in multiple dimensions at once. And you've stopped trying to explain it to people who don't get it. Because you know you're here for something bigger than routine. You know you're part of a frequency shift that can't be measured by metrics. You know that every strange detour, every delay, every divine disruption has been part of a blueprint you couldn't see but felt. And that feeling, that's the confirmation. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that hums in your bones and says, you're exactly where you need to be. So if you've ever wondered why you felt so different, so unseen, so quietly powerful, it's because you're not here to follow the world. You're here to recalibrate it, not with noise, not with force, but with frequency, with presence, with truth. And the truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers and shifts the entire universe. The invisible blueprint, why your isolation was the training ground for your silent power. There's a sacred intelligence behind every season of isolation you've endured. It wasn't random. You weren't being forgotten by life, you were being forged by it. And if you felt like you've spent most of your life on the outside looking in, watching others move in packs while you walked alone, understand this, that solitude wasn't punishment. It was a blueprint and a divine architecture custom designed for you. Because those who are chosen to shift reality silently can't be shaped by noise. They have to be refined in quiet places, in invisible realms, where the ego is stripped away and the soul is revealed. If you think back to your loneliest seasons, you'll realize they were also the most transformative. Without distractions, without applause, without anyone telling you who to be, you were forced to meet the rawness of your own being. You faced your fears without buffer. You held your pain without performance. You learned to find peace in your own breath, power in your own silence. That's not ordinary. That's initiation. And the reason it felt so heavy at times is because the weight of your purpose is not light. You were being trained to carry something subtle but seismic and energetic signature that would ripple through the collective without needing to be seen or celebrated. Isolation taught you how to listen, not just to others, but to you, to subtle frequencies, and to the way your body reacts before your mind understands, to the way truth vibrates differently than illusion. And over time, your senses sharpened. You started picking up on energy shifts in rooms, in people, in situations. You stopped being fooled by appearances. You stopped needing evidence for what you knew. That inner knowing was cultivated in silence. And now, it's your compass. Most people don't have that. They rely on external cues, social proof, consensus. But you've been trained to move by resonance. That's what makes you powerful, and that's what makes you dangerous to systems built on conformity. But you see, the world doesn't know what to do with someone who's not seeking validation. That's why you've often made people uncomfortable without even trying. You weren't playing the same game. While others were busy performing, networking, climbing, your soul was going inward. You weren't trying to be seen, you were trying to be clear. And clarity requires emptiness. It requires space. That's what isolation gave you, space to shed layers that were never yours to carry. Expectations, conditioning, identities you inherited but never chose. You burned them all in the fire of your solitude. And what emerged? A quiet, rooted presence, one that doesn't need to prove, because it knows. But let's be honest, it didn't always feel sacred. Sometimes it felt like abandonment. There were days when the silence was deafening, when you questioned your path, your worth, your sanity, when you prayed for connection and heard nothing back. And yet, even in those moments, especially in those moments you were being stretched, your nervous system was being expanded to hold greater frequencies. Your heart was being broken open so it could become a vessel for something bigger. You were being taught how to hold space not just for yourself, but for others who will one day come to you, not for answers, but for activation. And this is what so many don't understand. Shifting reality silently isn't about doing more. It's about being more present, more aware, more aligned. And that kind of being can only be cultivated in stillness. You weren't isolated to be hidden. You were isolated to be hollowed out, so that when the time came, you could carry light without distortion, wisdom without ego, power without noise. That's the silent power the world desperately needs, but doesn't yet know how to recognize. So if you're still in that season of isolation, if you're still wondering why you feel so far from everything and everyone, remember this: you're not behind. You're becoming. You're being finely tuned like an instrument that's meant to play a frequency so pure, so precise, that it changes the atmosphere without a single word. And when the time is right, when the world is quiet enough to finally hear what you've become, you'll no longer need to announce yourself. Your energy will do the speaking. Your presence will do the shifting. Ask yourself this: what if the very loneliness you've been trying to escape is the womb of your power? What if the silence you've been resenting is where your soul is speaking the loudest? The blueprint is still unfolding, and you are right where you're meant to be. Frequency over fame, why being unseen is the most powerful position you can hold. There's a moment when you've spent enough time in isolation, enough time listening inward, enough time peeling back the layers of your identity, when you begin to understand something that changes everything, visibility doesn't equal value. In a world obsessed with being seen, recognized, followed, and praised, this realization is revolutionary. It frees you, because you start to feel the truth that your power doesn't come from being known by the world. It comes from being known by the universe. And the universe doesn't need you to be famous. It needs you to be in frequency. We live in a time where the loudest voices often seem the most influential. But energy doesn't work that way. The most transformative beings on this planet are not the ones with the biggest platforms, they're the ones with the clearest vibration. And clarity doesn't need an audience. It only needs alignment. If your field is clean, if your intentions are pure, if your presence is anchored in truth, then you could walk through a room and shift its entire energy without saying a single word. That's not metaphor. That's physics. That's resonance. You've probably already experienced this. People feeling affected by you without understanding why. Spaces feeling different when you arrive. Conversations deepening in your presence. These aren't coincidences. They're confirmations. You don't need fame to change the world. You need frequency. And when you realize this, the chase ends and the pressure dissolves. You stop hustling to be seen and start cultivating your signal. You begin to understand that the less distracted you are by the noise of the external world, the more attuned you become to the subtle realms, the ones where real transformation happens. And here's where the paradox kicks in. The more invisible you become to the world, the more visible you become to the divine. You start attracting the right people at the right time for the right reasons. You stop trying to network and start magnetizing. You stop marketing yourself and start radiating. And those who find you, those who are truly meant to experience your energy, will recognize you not by your image, but by your essence. They won't need a bio or a resume. They'll feel it. Your frequency will speak the language their soul remembers. But this is not an easy path, because being unseen in a world that equates visibility with impact can feel like failure. You watch others succeed in conventional ways, and part of you wonders, am I doing something wrong? But you're not wrong. You're just rare. You're operating on a different grid, on a different timeline, a different purpose, and your value cannot be measured by metrics made for the masses. You are not here to go viral. You're here to go vertical, to root so deeply into your truth that your very presence becomes a portal. So what do you do when the world doesn't see you? You keep refining your energy. You keep listening. You keep showing up for the invisible work, the meditations, the journaling, the inner dialogues, the breathwork, the prayers, the silence. Because all of that is building something far more powerful than likes or shares. It's building coherence. It's building integrity. It's building field strength, the kind of energetic presence that can shift a person's life from across the room or across the planet without you even knowing it. This is the essence of true spiritual leadership, not seeking to lead, but being so deeply yourself that others are reminded of who they are. Not needing to be followed, but naturally becoming a guidepost simply by walking your path with devotion. And yes, it's humbling. It often goes unnoticed. It rarely gets applause, but it's real, it's sustainable, and it's eternal. Because frequency doesn't die, it ripples. So ask yourself, Would you still do your inner work if no one ever saw the result? Would you still walk the path if no one ever praised you for it? Would you still refine your vibration if it only benefited the collective silently, behind the scenes, without your name ever being mentioned? That's the question that separates ego from soul. That's the threshold. And once you cross it, you step into a kind of power that doesn't need to be proven, a kind of influence that doesn't require a stage. You become one of the unseen architects of the new world, the quiet builders, the frequency holders, the ones who shift reality not by shouting but by being. You, in your stillness, in your sovereignty, in your sacred anonymity, are holding a frequency that is quietly rearranging the future. Never underestimate that. Never devalue it. You weren't made to fit where the noise thrives. You were made to resonate where truth lives. The silent backbone of awakening, how your hidden role anchors the new Earth timeline. There is a reason you've been called to walk this path with such quiet strength. A reason you've often felt like the invisible thread holding things together while others fall apart. The truth is, you are part of a global network of souls who are anchoring the new Earth frequency not through noise, not through spectacle, but through unwavering energetic presence. You are the silent backbone of awakening, and the work you're doing behind the scenes is not just important, it's essential. In every great transformation, there are those who lead from the front and those who hold the foundation. You are the latter. You are the ones who keep the energy steady while others rise and fall. You are the ones who feel the collective pain before it surfaces, who transmute chaos through your own bodies so others don't have to. You're not just healing yourself, you're processing timelines. You're dissolving ancestral patterns. You're clearing energetic debris that would otherwise slow down the awakening of the masses. And you're doing it without asking for credit, without needing to be seen, because you know the work is real, even if it's invisible. That's what makes you powerful beyond measure. You've chosen to embody a role that very few understand. You've said yes to the sacred work of being a stabilizer, an amplifier, a transmitter of light in a world conditioned to worship appearances. And you've done it through heartbreak and through loss, through years of not knowing why your life felt so different, so heavy, so purposeful. But now you know. Now it's clear. You weren't meant to follow trends. You were meant to hold timelines. This is why your path has been so intense, why you've had to do so much inner excavation, why your nervous system has been tested again and again. Because in order to hold the new frequency, you had to be cleared of the old one. You had to become a vessel strong, clean and sovereign. And now, as the world begins to wobble, as systems collapse and illusions dissolve, you are one of the few who can remain grounded. Not because you're unaffected, but because you've trained yourself to feel everything without being consumed by anything. You're not here to save the world. You're here to anchor it, to hold a frequency so stable that it becomes a lighthouse for others who are just beginning to awaken. You don't have to preach. You don't have to convince. Just by existing in your clarity, you give others permission to remember theirs. That's the beauty of silent power. It doesn't dominate, it invites. It doesn't demand attention, it commands respect. And the more you embody this, the more you'll realize you've already been doing this work for years. So many of your struggles, your breakdowns, your spiritual crises were never just about you. They were rehearsals, trainings, initiations into the exact medicine you came here to carry. You've walked through the fire not to be burned, but to become fireproof. And now, you radiate a quiet force that bends reality even when you're just sitting in stillness. Your presence is a portal. Your energy is a blueprint. You are, quite literally, helping to hold the grid of a new earth into place. So, if you've ever doubted your role, questioned your impact, or felt forgotten by the spotlight, remember this: you were never meant to be the star of the show. You were meant to be the soul who holds the field steady so the show could even exist in the first place. You are the sacred scaffolding of a collapsing world and the quiet architecture of the one rising to replace it. You are not small. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are exactly where the divine needs you to be, calibrating reality, one breath at a time. And that is more than enough.